So I'm thinking of doing this project where I make a little video about some of my favorite artists and kind of like how I discovered them and my little story about them. I thought it would be fun. So today we're doing The Weeknd. I'm a really, really big fan of The Weeknd. I think he's one of the most brilliant pop artists, and you can argue what pop means or whatever you want to do, but I do think that he's one of the greatest pop artists of this decade, and definitely the decade to come. I don't know how much farther it'll go, but I just think he's genius, and I just wanted to tell my little story about him. So my Weeknd story starts in 2015, and it was early 2015. I was working at Papa John's Pizza. I worked at Papa John's Pizza for 3 years. So around this time, we would always listen to music through YouTube. So usually someone would just like search up a popular song or just like any song they wanted to listen to, and YouTube would just randomly play whatever the hell it wanted, really. So we were just listening to YouTube, and I was on the make line making a pizza, and the song came on, and I don't know, I guess it didn't really stand out to me very much when the song started, but when I heard Weeknd's voice, Abel's voice, and I'm sure lots of people could probably relate to the first time they heard The Weeknd and his voice, but I wasn't looking at the computer, like I didn't know what was playing at all. I was just like, wow, like who's this voice? So I just like stopped whatever I was doing, and I went and looked over, and I saw that said Ariana Grande featuring The Weeknd. Without the second E, I saw it was stylized. I wasn't sure if The Weeknd was like a group or like a producer. I kind of thought of it like the XX or however you say that. Like, I was like, is it like that? Are they like electronic something or other? Like, I had no idea what that even meant. And then I saw Abel in the video, and I was like, oh, that's The Weeknd, and like that's this guy's voice. And I was like, well, I love his voice. Like, this is the most beautiful singing voice I've heard in a long time. So I was just immediately smitten. So of course that was the song Love Me Harder. So the first time I ever heard The Weeknd was Ariana Grande's Love Me Harder. And some OG fans would be all like you got in late, but let me tell you that nobody fucking knew who The Weeknd was at this point. I never heard of him. Nobody I knew in my personal life had ever heard of him. And I had no idea that he had been doing his thing since 2011. So the thing with Love Me Harder was that it was also coming out around the same time that Earned It came out. So it would play Love Me Harder, and then Earned It would always play after. And then I think it was the other 50 Shades of Grey song with Ellie Goulding. Her song would always play after that. So it was like always the same thing. But anyway, I recognized that Earned It was also The Weeknd, this person that sang on the song that had such a beautiful voice. And I was like, well, I really like this guy's voice. At the same time, someone I followed on Tumblr was posting about The Weeknd and posted an audio file for The Hills. So I was like, oh, it's this guy. So I listened to The Hills, and like, I love that song immediately. I'm interested to see what else this guy does. So I looked him up on YouTube, and I listened to a couple songs I'm pretty sure that were from like the early mixtapes. And I remember listening to Wicked Games because I saw that title, and I was like, Wicked Game? Like the Chris Isaak song? I'm like, is it a cover of that song? And I got really excited. But it wasn't a cover of that song, but it's still a really great song, of course. And I don't know if that's like, if he was referencing that or what was going on, but that definitely brought my attention to that song. But I listened to a couple songs, I was like, all right, like it didn't really stick out to me as much as The Hills did at that point. I was just like, yeah, these are pretty cool. So I downloaded his whole discography thinking I was gonna get The Hills with it because I didn't know how old that song, like I didn't know what was going on. I was just like, I love that song, I'm interested, so I just went and found a discography and downloaded the whole thing. But there wasn't The Hills. Once I downloaded discography, I looked, I was like, The Hills isn't on here. So I had to download The Hills separately. And that's when I kind of realized it was like a separate song, or it was like newer. I don't know how I figured it out. Point is, The Hills changed my life. So at the time I was using this old iPod Classic, 80 gigs. It doesn't work anymore. I tried plugging it in for this video to check how many plays The Hills had, because I remember it was the most played song on this whole iPod, and I'd had this iPod for years, and it probably had hundreds and hundreds of plays. So next thing, Canada Day. And for those of you who don't know, Canada Day is July 1st. So on Canada Day, I was invited out to a Canada Day celebration to watch the fireworks, and it was just me and one friend, and we got super drunk. I got blackout drunk, and I was trying to convince him. I was trying to tell him, like, you have to listen to this song, The Hills. You have to listen to it. And I think he knew of The Weeknd because his roommates were like really into, they were like music people, so they kind of already knew who he was. but they weren't really like fans of him or anything like that. But I was like, this song's so good. And he was like, yeah, it's okay. Like, it wasn't really his thing. He didn't really listen to that kind of music. But he was like, oh, I heard that he has a song with Max Martin, and it leaked, and I have this song by Max Martin. And I was like, I knew who Max Martin was because I grew up a really big pop fan, and I knew who he was because of Britney Spears and stuff. So I was like, oh, wow, that's really great. Like, that's cool. And so he had like a leaked version on his phone that had like, I don't even know, it was just horrible quality and had like some sort of tag on it or something. We were just like sitting in the forest watching. We weren't watching the fireworks at the time, but like we were waiting for it and listening to Can't Feel My Face and being like, this is so different from The Hills and the other songs that I've heard by him. But it's cool. Like, I really like that this is like a cool little dancey song, but I was like, it's nothing compared to The Hills. Like, I was way too obsessed with The Hills. So story goes that I was really blackout drunk, and all I remember is listening to the song with this iPod in headphones in the forest, and there was like strangers everywhere, and I just was so obsessed with it that I was like belting it at the top of my lungs and like pounding the ground to like the beat of the song, and like that's all I remember. I remember meeting some people like randomly, like they came up out of the forest, and I don't really know what happened, but we like chatted with them. But I woke up the next morning in my bed, and I don't know how I got there. My friend had to like bring me to my house, but I do remember banging my fists on the ground to The Hills. So not too long after that, I took a Greyhound trip, and I had the whole discography with The Hills on my iPod. So I was on the Greyhound by myself, and I was like, what a perfect time to listen to this whole discography, because I was going to be on this Greyhound for hours. And I just remember like looking out on the plains and the road going by and listening to, first I started at the beginning. I started with Trilogy, and then I went to Kissland, and then that was about it at that time, I guess, except for The Hills, of course. So the one moment that really stood out to me was I got up to Echoes of Silence, and the first song starts, and I suddenly realize it is my favorite Michael Jackson song. I just felt like the whole world stopped. I was like, no way, of course he covered this. And then I later found out that it was his favorite Michael Jackson song, and not only that, it's the song that got him to start everything. It's a song that got him to start writing songs and wanting to do this, and I just think that's so amazing that we had the same favorite Michael Jackson song, and I was just so blown away. I was like, I can't believe this. I remember being so happy. After that, I was completely obsessed with The Weeknd. I listened to nothing but The Weeknd for probably the entirety of 2015 after that. Like, I don't know if I listened to anything else. I really don't. Like, I must have listened to things here and there, but seriously, it was just The Weeknd. This was before Beauty Behind the Madness even came out. So for that whole summer, I was listening to nothing but Trilogy and Kissland.
All that money, the money is the motive. All that money.
I used to use Snapchat a lot, and I would make these really long Snapchat stories of like my entire day that nobody would even watch. Like, my friends would be like, I'm not watching this. But I would always reference The Weeknd and like Weeknd lyrics and all this stuff, and nobody knew what I was talking about. I was lip syncing into the camera The Weeknd songs constantly.
Ask me if I do this every day. I said often. In the room where the kisses ain't free. You gotta pay with your body.
And I had zero friends that listened to The Weeknd. So I would like try to talk about The Weeknd to like random people, and no one knew who was. Nobody. Even though I came in late, like no one knew who he was when I discovered him. So I really do feel like I was able to kind of watch that rise and watch, like, now I go up to people and like I talk about how I like The Weeknd, and everyone knows who I'm talking about. Everybody. So a lot of people wonder, how do you like The Weeknd? Like, there are people who are not into The Weeknd that are like, I just can't listen to it. Like, a lot of people are like, it's too misogynistic, or like, he just seems like such a douchebag, and like, how can you listen to that as a girl, and all these things. And I'm like, so the thing about The Weeknd is, I think that he's playing a character. And I say that in the sense that he's choosing one part of himself to create this artistic representation of himself. That artistic representation of himself is a very dark and emotional and not a great person a lot of the time, especially to women, but that's the character he's playing. And a YouTuber, John Denton, I very recommend that you check him out. He explained it as like he's kind of like a dark, sexy vampire character. He describes that very well, so I'm glad that he can see what I'm talking about. And like his voice is so angelic that he sings all these horrible things, but he can say literally anything and make it sound gorgeous. And that's just the beautiful talent that he has. And not only that, but it's incredibly cinematic. I would listen to that music, I would feel like I was watching a movie or I was part of the movie. I felt like I was that character. I just felt like I was living out this movie when I listened to this music, and I thought it was it's so hard to put into words. It's just so immersive. It is such a world, and yeah, it's dark and fucked up and not anything to live by necessarily, but like honest. And I truly believe that a lot of the things, especially on Trilogy, are true. But I also think that he's choosing like a specific part of himself to create this character. So anyway, back to my story. I used to fall asleep listening to him. I would go to bed at night and just put on his entire discography and fall asleep. So I was so obsessed, I wanted to buy merch, and I went on the merch store and there was nothing. Like, it was just empty. It said that there was gonna be more stuff coming eventually, but there's nothing now. And I was like, fuck, like I really need like an EXO shirt. So what I ended up doing was I just Googled like EXO shirt or like weekend shirt or whatever, and I just found like literally like a bootleg shirt with just like the EXO logo printed on it. It was probably like $10 or something. Like the shirt was shit quality, but I was just so happy to be able to wear a shirt that had the EXO logo on it, so I could just like proclaim my love for the weekend out to the world. So I used to wear this bootleg shirt. I got rid of it now because now I have actual merch. So my favorite Weeknd album is Kissland. And when I got really into Kissland, I kind of learned as I was going on the internet and talking to people that Kissland was like his least popular project, was his least popular album. And it didn't do well, and it was a disappointment, and not a lot of people cared for it. And I was like, I remember just being so confused, like how do people not see the beauty in this? But that being said, now I definitely see so many people talking about how amazing Kissland is. It feels like there's a lot more understanding of it. I don't know why at the time people didn't really care for it. I guess some people still don't care for it, but it does seem a lot more popular than it was back then. Like it seemed like nobody liked it. And I was just so blown away. Like it was so rare to find someone who was like, yes, Kissland. And I'm like, yes, like thank you. So also around this time, I had found his old Tumblr, which is still up and you can find it. And he posted a lot of stuff like, just like older stuff. Like he would post a lot about old movies and French movies. And I'm really into like 60s French movies, so I was really excited to find that. And he used to write, he wrote like a story. There was like a live journal where he had a story written, and I was just so, you guys don't even know. I was just so in love with this person. I was like, this person is like, this artist is one of the greatest people I think I've ever discovered in my life. So, of course, eventually, Beauty Behind the Madness drops, and he totally blows up. Everyone knows who he is now. And I remember when the day that came out, the first time I ever listened to Beauty Behind the Madness, I went in my bed and I put in my headphones and I just like leaned up against like the pillow in the wall and I listened to that album with my eyes closed in the dark, and it was an experience. It was an experience. And I distinctly remember listening to Tell Your Friends and that Kanye production. Oh, like you can totally tell that it's him. And I just remember like whatever that noise is, like near the end, it just so got to me. I was just like, ooh, like chills. And not only that, but I was also super excited that Ed Sheeran and Lana Del Rey were on this album. Now, a lot of people, especially OG Weeknd fans, weren't feeling this, especially the Ed Sheeran thing, but I was a really big fan of Ed Sheeran. I'm not so much anymore. I don't really care for his last album at all, like not even one song from it. But at this time, I was still like, yeah, Ed Sheeran. So I was so excited to see that Ed Sheeran and Lana Del Rey, because to this day, still huge Lana Del Rey fan. And I'm so happy that they're friends and they've done more together, which is so amazing. And I hope that they do even more together. I think that would be great. So I first saw Weeknd in concert on November 30th, 2015. So this is right at the end of the year where I'm so obsessed with him and I do nothing but listen to him and talk about him. So I got to go see him. And I was so excited, and of course I was really hoping he was going to play Kissland songs, but of course he only played Professional, which is fine, because I love Professional, and I was so happy that he even played one song from Kissland. So the funny story about my show, and I think that this has happened like multiple times with Travis Scott, but I was in the merch line when I heard Travis Scott starting, and I heard Antidote, and I was like, oh, like shit, we should go. And me and my friend were like running as Antidote was playing, and we were like, because we're in an arena, so we had to like run all the way down this long hallway to find our seats. And by the time that we get in the doors, and I swear, it like my memory is probably completely wrong on this, just because I was probably talking to my friend, and like this is 4 years ago, but it almost feels like I could hear the song, and then as soon as we opened the door and got out into the arena, all the lights were on, and there was no one on stage, and it was over. And I'm like, did bro only play like one song? What is happening? So I later find out that that's exactly what happened. He played that song and I guess got mad for some reason and like left. I don't really know what happened, but I totally missed Travis Scott, didn't see him at all, kind of heard Antidote. I have no idea. So the other thing is that he was playing like some banger songs from Beauty Behind the Madness, and the audience was standing up. So unfortunately, I wasn't in the front row or anything. I fucking wish, but I was kind of high up and I could see like everyone. And a lot of people were standing up. And I kid you not, The Birds Part 1 starts playing. I get so excited and everyone sits down. Like I about 80% of that fucking arena probably sat down. And I was like, this is the Birds! So I was really upset when that happened, but not everyone is gonna like the same songs, I guess. And I totally also understand that a lot of people who go to, especially like pop shows and shows at arenas and stuff, a lot of people go to shows just to like go to a show and have fun, and they're not like super obsessed with the artist. What I wish is that there was some sort of way that certain huge artists could play small shows and only certain amount of tickets and only specific, like, just so you can play to like real fans, because I think it would be so wonderful to experience a concert in a room full of fans who understand everything instead of a giant fucking arena where 80% of the people only know 3 songs. I just think that would be so great, but I don't think it's possible. So also around this time, I don't really use Reddit a whole lot, but I got really into the weeknd subreddit, and I was always posting and commenting, and I ended up making a friend on there who lived in New Zealand. And I just remember going through like my history on my account at the time, and it was just like, are the weeknd, like that's all I did. So come into 2016, it kind of started waning. I was still listening to him a lot. I remember Low Life came out. I was super into that fucking song. Oh, and Might Not came out. That was a good song too. And Belly, that's another story. I knew who Belly was when I was like in grade 8, so it was so funny to see him kind of re-emerge, connected to this artist that I just got super obsessed with. And I'm like, Belly? You mean the guy who did the song with Genuine? So later on into 2016, of course, Starboy came out. And I was very, very excited that my fave artist from the last year is dropping a new project, and I was so excited. I really, really enjoyed the first single. I thought it was really cool that he got to work with Daft Punk. I really do genuinely believe that he has great music taste, and he works with some really, really great producers and artists. So he was big now. I accepted that. I was like, I came in right at the end of him not being very well known. He's obviously blown up. I was just so happy for him. I was like, you know what? Fucking, like, I'm really glad he fucking deserves it. I'm very, very happy for him. Do I wish that I could still see the Kissland tour and I didn't get to see it? Yes. Do I wish that I could see him in a small room? Of course. Is that ever gonna happen? Nah. So I did go to the Starboy show as well, and which was also in an arena. I didn't buy any merch at that show because the merch was so expensive. Me and my friend joked, like, is he trying to like pay off drug dealers or something? Like, why is this so expensive? And I feel like the amount of people who were there to party maybe increased a little bit. I know that the people surrounding us were all just drinking and being kind of obnoxious, so that's what happens when you go to those shows, I guess. And then in 2017, he released My Dear Melancholy, which is gorgeous, and it was a very nice return to like the very like dark, introspective Abel. And contrary to a lot of people's opinions that you might see on the internet, I don't want Trilogy Abel back. I just want him to grow and do whatever the fuck he wants and what kind of music he wants to make. If I don't care for it, I don't care for it. But so far, I do care for it, and it's really nice to just watch him grow and do different things, and I'm always looking forward to what he's gonna do next. So that brings me to some features. Of course, over the years, he's been featured on several rappers' songs, doing choruses, doing verses, and everyone knows that when The Weeknd is featured on a song, it's a Weeknd song now. Some of the features I love. I think they're so great. I think even the rapper's verse is great in a lot of them. Like, for instance, I mentioned Low Life already, and I love Low Life. I love Might Not. I love Coming Out Strong. It's another Future one that I really love. But there are some that I really only like the Weeknd part, such as Gifted. I really only like the Weeknd part because it's amazing. French Montana, I also really don't like Nav. I don't see what people see in him. He bores me. I'm sorry. His content is boring. His persona is boring. I don't see it. So now, here we are in chapter 6, and we have Heartless and Blinding Lights. And if I had to pick one that I liked better, it's definitely Heartless. What I do think is that neither of the songs are necessarily anything drastically different from what he's been doing with the features and with Starboy. But I really, really love the direction that he's going in with kind of like this nostalgic 80s feel that everybody is getting from these songs. I also know that Max Martin has something to do with this song too. So this is Max Martin again. Is a genius. He really can't do very much wrong. He did 1989 Taylor Swift. He did old Britney Spears, early Britney Spears. I'm pretty sure he did like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC too. Man is a genius. I really can't fault him. So yeah, that's my Weeknd story. Super in love with The Weeknd, and I really hope that if you haven't listened to The Weeknd, that you give him a shot. I obviously recommend Kissland. It's such a masterpiece. Live For is okay, but the rest of it is just so spectacular. The transitions on it, Tears in the Rain, and like the videos and how cinematic he is. Like, Weeknd loves movies, and I just think that's so cool how he's doing that. And I'm sorry that my words and adjectives are like not great, but I honestly I really recommend him. If you have only heard like some of the singles, you should definitely go and listen to Trilogy and Kissland. Definitely start with the earlier stuff, because I think seeing his progression makes you appreciate it more for sure. And he's just so brilliant. He's so brilliant. I can't wait to see what he does next. Love it so much. I don't know how to end this video, so